Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another video. Want to start off this video by saying apologies for not uploading last week. I was just getting out of spring break for school, so honestly, that's on me on my part. I'll be genuinely honest. I was just being kind of lazy. But I'm back, and I did trade this week, and it was actually a great week. So obviously, for starters, hope you guys had a great trading week. Hope everything was good for you guys. A lot of downside, but of course, we will describe everything and stuff that I even talked about into the group, into like my friends and everything. For those that trade, of course, why I was actually not very convinced on this rally, and it was pretty simple. But obviously, we'll get through it. So obviously, looking at the weekly TBL, we actually gapped up on Monday from that like kind of little 2 week consolidation that we had. We had that kind of like little range, and if you want to see it visually right here, if we do pick out the rectangle, you can see we kind of had that balance. It just was just bouncing around. But um, Monday gapped up. We left kind of this massive gap. If you could just see, that's something very important to me, and I like to mark it out always because it's really important areas I like to get retested. We had that gap right there, right, from the high of that candle to that low, right. We had that gap, and so that was something I was personally watching throughout the week and something that's really important, right? If in the case that, that gap is not filled, obviously, in hindsight, let's say that was not like that, and we just see this candle structure on Monday. In the case that that is not filled, that is a pretty bullish reply from buyers. But in the case that it does get filled, like we did see this week, it just shows really good strength from sellers, in my opinion. So heading into Monday, and of course I will bring it up. Monday being the 24th. So the 24th, obviously, I actually came into this week kind of iffy this week because I said last week we saw some balanced conditions throughout the 2 week consolidation, but I'll be entering into the market with no areas of interest at the moment and I will let it develop. But I'm looking for two circumstances, right? And I said one, market has been rallying in the pre-market and we saw a pullback hold below the weekly bullish above. So my weekly bullish above was 57.65, and apologies for not again uploading this YouTube video, but you can just see from Monday that we were gapping up and we're already holding on pullbacks. You could see right here. You can see right here, there was a pullback right here, just from like a gap up, pullback right here, pullback right here, pullback into the weekly bullish level, to the tick actually, pullback, 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 all pre-market. And for me, sometimes pre-market is important and sometimes it's not. But in this case, I was already noticing that the market was gapping up and there was pullbacks. So one thing I was entering is market has been rallying in the pre-market and we saw a pullback hold a hold above the weekly bullish. So I'll be monitoring if pullbacks hold at low volumes slash volumes to take the market long. Right. And then another one I was looking for, and this is something that played out later in the week. Market has been rallying off low volume, right? And let me just open it up for you guys to give you guys a visual. Market has been rallying off low volume at the moment and has been decreasing more every day. So it's possible this rally is losing interest in my opinion. I can possibly see a consolidation build that sells off, and I'll be monitoring for a pullback to take the market short, right? And so obviously, I really want to show you guys on a visual on that kind of how the market is it was looking on that kind of like low volume. So let me just pull it up for you. And so obviously today will be require a lot of patience to let the market develop because we were just really gapping up and there was really no levels of interest for me. Like there was really just generally nothing. I think the only level of interest that we had from that day was 57.20, which or 58.20. My apologies, which was the point of control from like weeks ago, right? Weeks ago. But again, nothing really interesting. But obviously, and let me have it show you guys there is if you were to look at a daily structure for this chart, right, you could see that on this whole rally, let's say from the bottom right here, you could clearly see, and I'll show you a visual right here, that the market is just, as the market is going up, as the market's rallying, volume is slowly decreasing. Very much so, right? And you can really see it there. And so to me, not only could you just tell that the volume was decreasing by the way the volatility was in the market, but you could just visually see it, right? You could really visually see it on the volume, and it was just really slow. So I was not really confident on this rally, but again, I'm not one to call a top, and I'm not going to be like, okay, this is the top, I'm going to short this, I'm going to put all my money, this is the top. No, I like to see some confirmation and then go, right? So that's something I was looking for. I was looking to see if we could possibly see some signs of buying start to slow down. And so, that's exactly what I came into the market with. So Monday, obviously, the only trade I actually only took one trade on Monday, and this day was actually a loss, right? This day was a loss, $65 down. And so one thing I was actually looking for is as the market was rallying, and this is something I was talking about in the group, is that the market was rallying, but despite this, there was lots of buying, but it was just moving too slow, and there was like not much, move to the upside. There was not a lot of move to the upside, and so for me, I like to see that as buyers, despite being strong and heavy, not really showing lots of strength, right? Not really showing lots of strength. And so you could just see market was just rallying. And right here, something I would be looking for is I even shared it on it. And so I was possibly looking for a pullback off that low volume node right here after we got that massive rally, but we never got it. But also I said there's a lot of orders up here, right? Lots of buying up here. And so, there was just lots of buying up here. And you could see it from the footprint, you could see it from the time and sales, a lot. And just mainly up here as well. And so once I started noticing that and there was no continuation, it was actually really slow, I decided to take the market short, trying to see if, this could be a sign for a potential reversal, targeting the 57.91s down here and then potentially lower. However, obviously we never got that, and the most bullish scenario actually played out, right? Pullbacks were something that worked all day. You could see we had this kind of volume here. We had this volume right here, right? We build that volume, and where do we get that pullback? Just exactly like I talked about, into volume. Same thing, right? We have that consolidation, pullback into volume, consolidation, pullback into volume. And so it was a really slow day up, but again, it's not something that I was super against it, and I was willing to try it just because it was something that was like a lot of buying and no continuation, and just to say it was very slow in general, right? So I'm just happy to walk away with 1L on that day, and that's that. Now Tuesday, Tuesday, I enter with the market now with a bit more levels, right? Still moving slow, but I was looking at that 58.20 and that 57.95, right? So on Tuesday, 58.20 and 57.95, right? Market was still very slow as well. So I was anticipating that we were still gonna open up slow. We were still gonna really open up slow, and there's a chance that there's just going to be a lot of consolidation, right? So we actually did touch the 58.20s at that first touch, and we bounced off that, but I didn't get the market long there. And so I was just really like seeing that there's a chance that we're just moving slow. Sellers just seem to be kind of in control, kind of in the morning and stuff like that. We did see a couple signs of selling down here, but I wasn't ready to take the market long yet. It's just the market was just not. I wasn't really feeling the market yet. And so I could just see, and I even tell the Discord is that right here I talk about it. I said market right here. So one thing I was talking about is okay. Let's see. Okay, we'll be watching for a potential another slow day as we continue to grind up on slower volume. The VIX levels for me, and also one thing that I was starting to know is that again same thing. As market was rallying, there was decreasing in volume as we continue higher, and that's why we see these slow conditions recently. Another thing I was looking at is the market was kind of in something I considered a chop range. Is that during this range the VIX moves slow, market moves slow. And so we were moving in that kind of little consolidation, and I gave a visual there. And so I wasn't really kind of feeling just getting along off a pullback yet, right? For me, when it's chop conditions, I like to play failed breakouts or failed breakdowns. And so, um, I was just talking about the levels. We are pulling up into yesterday's kind of value area, main distribution, and stuff like that. And so I did say one thing is I said I will say one thing though. The market is approaching 1825. My condition is only if we see volume come into the market and volatility. Once we hit 1825, get above 58.20 and pull back into it, I'll be interested in taking the market long. And so I said only if we see volume, volatility, and momentum. And so there was news that day, but I did take the market long. And to show a visual here on the journal, this was actually a green day for me, but it was a very slow one, right? It was the market was still very slow, so it was hard for me to even extract a couple points, right? So I actually got a little bit earlier, anticipating that 58.20, right? Anticipating above. And one thing that I really liked about it is I'll give you that 58.20 level right there, and I'll give you it more visual. Let me see. So it's just there. That 58.20 is just there, right? And I said as long as we could get above and hold above it, that's something I'm interested in if we see volume come in. And so one thing I did like is we the market was approaching 1825, right? And so along with that, it failed to break a low, which is something I like to play during balanced conditions. We failed to break the previous low here at this low, and we were building some volume down here, and we pulled back, and I got in the market long there, right? Apologies. I got in the market long, tight stop loss below, but this just was just moving really slow, right? My first TP was a break above this kind of pivot, right? And the rest was kind of holding above close to high of day. I didn't want to get too close to high of day just because how slow it was, but you could see I got in the market long around 58.16, and it took forever to even just give me 7 points, and it took forever to give me 12 points, but I was able to take the market long, and it's something that I followed my plan, right? The VIX aligned with it. The VIX was heading toward resistance. We saw some resistance there, along with the market failing to continue lower. Did a failed breakdown, and eventually that same plan I talked about above 58.20 and a hold with volume. That's where I'm interested in this. This eventually did rally, and this was a good analysis for my part. But I was able to capitalize on it earlier because of the VIX, because of the failed breakdown, and because of how I played balanced conditions. So this was a really good day for me, and it took forever, but it played out and it was really, really good, right? And so that was my Tuesday for me. Now heading into Wednesday. I was actually looking at. Oh, sorry, this was Wednesday. Heading into Wednesday, I was still looking at that same thing. Market was still rallying on low volume stuff like that. So I was just looking at kind of this little mini distribution thing. So one thing I was looking at said, I do not want to take the market long during any case scenario unless very noticeable on the VIX plus a breakdown that fails and reclaims. I would love to target 58.37 for this, which is the previous day's high. And then I also said, for this only this scenario, I will probably watch. Only scenario I will probably watch is a failed breakdown above yesterday's high that fails for a possible move into yesterday's mid-range about 58.25. And I still said in the VIX, we maintained this chop zone from 18.25 to 17.6, so expect some slowness, right? And so heading on to there, we were still in that VIX chop zone. News was coming around 10, like expected. It was looking very slow, and so I was just happy to sit and watch because it was not something that I was really aligning with. Not any of the levels were playing out. Nothing was just feeling really confident, right? And something I want to emphasize is you don't always have to trade, right? You just have to trade when your levels play out. So I was still saying, one scenario is that, lots of selling at these lows. Delta just keeps increasing as we move lower, and I'll give you a visual right here. You can see all that negative delta. That's a lot of aggressive sellers hitting the bid. So large aggressive sellers. And so I was saying one thing is if market really wants to push lower and sell, then a push below 58.11 has to be seen. 58.11. So if we go to the previous day, right? One thing to notice as well, and it's something really, really useful if anyone eventually, wants to try it this way, is that if the market is really in the pre-market, so this was Tuesday's range, right? We had this Tuesday's range. If the market during the pre-market maintains within the previous day's range, and this is something on my analysis, if it maintains, like you could just see right here, we are just ranging, right? You can see from that high to that low. If we just keep ranging even the pre-market, there's a chance there's going to be choppy consolidation, right? And so that's just something to look for. And so one thing I was looking for is to see if we were able to break out that range. I was talking about those 58.12s on that market, which is the previous day low, kind of that breakdown, those 58.11s, right? And so I was looking for that, and I said if the market really wants to push below, it has 58.11 has to be seen below. And so you could just see all that aggressive selling and stuff like that. And I said, although I mentioned earlier that pullbacks don't work in chop conditions, VIX was now pushing above that chop range. So it's giving me confidence that we could see some volatility. But at the same time, I would prefer waiting to market to get below 58.11. And so all that visual. And so I did actually take the market short, right? I did take the market short once we got a pullback into that 58.11. And you can see the visual right here. 58.11 was right here, and I'll show you guys on the journal. Actually, this is where I just took a 2.0, and honestly, this was just mistiming from my part. This was unlucky from my part, and it's not something to be upset about. It's just market was just not accepting that 58.11. But that 58.11, we were pulling back into this area and we were actually holding really nice. And I got in short, and there was actually a point where it moved in my favor immediately. But unfortunately, it did not continue and actually got stopped out for 2 minor points. And this eventually kept working out, and it just didn't play out. It just didn't play out. And something I was actually watching intraday is, although I got stopped out, I said that if we could get a break above, if we get above 17 but not above 19, I'll be looking to take the market short, a failed breakout above these 17s. And so we never got that, so I never took another trade. But again, it was right analysis, just wrong timing, and that's not something to be upset about. When I have those right analysis, wrong timing, it's not something to get upset about, right? The market's not always going to play in your favor. You're not always going to get lucky. You're not always going to have green, but just understand that it's just mistiming and move on, right? You don't want to overtrade. And my second entry was if we got a break above that 17. We never did, so I'm happy to just walk away with 2 points, right? So that was my day, and you could see that the market eventually did sell off, and we did get that volatility. So it was really good to see, right? It's good to see that your analysis is really playing out. It was really good. And so now I was done with this day, visual on me taking that L right there. Took a short once those 58.11s were holding, but again, didn't work out. And so now we move on to the next day, right? You always move on with a clean mindset. Next day. So now market now was actually getting below the weekly bullish above. So this was already showing signs from sellers itself that they were looking strong, as they were already getting within the previous week's range, right? And so obviously, if you could see it right here on this weekly TPO, we just had that consolidation, and we were actually able to get within that previous day week range. So that's something like a pretty strong sign that, for example, one, market gapped up on Monday, but again, now we're actually getting below the previous week's range. That's something that shows that sellers are really stepping up. They're really, really stepping up. So I was actually looking for, okay, I'm only interested in taking the market long if we're able to get above the weekly bullish level, right? I do not want to predict the bottom. I do not want, once I saw that the market was able to bring some volatility in, we were able to get within the previous week's range, and we were even showing some strong selling. This shows to me, even with the start of the week, how I was saying that we were rallying on low volume. And if you want to see something, actually, is you could see, right, these are the first 2 days, Monday and Tuesday, but look at that sell-off on Wednesday. Look at how the increase of volume just happens, right? We get above the VIX and we get to see that increase of volume, right? Increase of volume for me means there's interest. Now we're on this sell-off, we're getting interest, right? So sellers are now looking interesting. So I'm saying, okay, if we're able to get below the 57.43, that's something I'm looking for. Also, if we get pullbacks within the 57.65, it's something I'm interested in. So we're gonna see, right? I don't want to get in front of sellers and stuff like that, but I don't want to get in front of sellers, but it's something that I'm watching. You can see 57.65 was rejecting. So now 57. Okay, so now 57.45 was the main level, right? 57.45, and this was a really great trade in my opinion, because 57.43 is something I was watching, right? And so this, I don't usually take the market short that quick, but it's just something that played out. Market was opening and it was rejecting strongly that weekly level, that weekly bullish level at 57.65. So again, bears were still looking more interesting to me, and I'll give you a visual on that 57.43. 57.43, right? Give you a visual there. So 57.43, we're there. That's kind of the visual. And so, not to show you on the Discord, right? Main level on VIX will be 1905. There's also news at 10, so be on the lookout for that. And now the VIX was pushing above 1905. So VIX pushing above, sellers looking strong. I said very ideal for sellers. Below the pre-market lows allows the market to fill the gap, right? We're looking at for that potential gap fill, as we talked about earlier that week, is, we had that gap fill. That gap fill was filled around 57.22. There's a chance that if we get below previous day's low around 43, there's a chance we could go fill the gap, and that's when we'll probably find some signs of buying and stuff like that. So again, that's something I was looking for, and I'll give you even that gap fill visual down here at those 57.22s, right? Those 57.22s, and I believe it was actually 25 right there. And so 57.25. But again, market open. This is 9:30 open right here, and we were already starting to see some signs of selling here. Already some signs of selling. And now usually I don't always do this. And I'm not really keen to taking trades off market open, but it just seems something really strong in my favor, and it's something really interesting. So we're already seeing, and it was at my level as well. It was at my level, all the analysis I was looking for. Below 57.43, we're going to be able to hold. And we were looking for actually some signs. We were seeing some signs of selling there, some signs of there was a lack of continuation. And so I decided to take the market short. I actually took 2 trades. One, I got stopped out for a small 2-point loss, and then I re-entered again with the same confirmation because it was still looking fine. And so again, I re-entered, and then that's when it worked in my favor right there. And so I took some profit off at the, I believe these are the pre-market lows at 57.30. Took some off there and took the rest off at that gap fill, the one I was talking about, right? So this is a visual on those pre-market lows. This is where I took some off, and then the rest was on that gap fill. And that gap fill on the 22s, look what happened after that. We got that gap fill, and right after we rallied. We rallied. And so that's just something to visual right there. Played that, and I was really done early in the morning. It was a great day, and I was able to capitalize just off my levels, just off spotting selling, and continuation like that. And now, again, I don't want to continue in Yap to show you guys my trade. Maybe I'm debating on maybe not doing kind of, trade recaps. Maybe I'll just leave that for the Discord and stuff like that. If that's something people are interested in, I feel like I'm just yapping away, ranting away. But again, this is the last day now, Friday. Friday was also a great day. I was able to capitalize on this. And so on Friday, right, I'll give you even a visual on there. A visual on Thursday, right? We had that intraday bullish for 57.43. Everything is always posted live and updated on Discord. And so 57.43. This I was already up nicely. I was already looking to take some off at the pre-market lows, which is 57.29.75, and the rest was at that gap fill 57.22.25. And you could just see right there. Took some off at the pre-market lows, took some off at the unfilled gap, and I was already done. Perfect. Spotted that levels, intraday bearish level below, rejected nicely, took the market short. Now, lastly, for Friday, now I was looking to see if yesterday we filled that gap, right? I wanted to see what type of continuation we would see, right? Below 57.34, we could possibly see continuation, but I was just really looking at the market, trying to see, right? We were looking really strong to the downside. Sellers were looking really strong, and so to see what there's continuation, right? Now that sellers were able to get, once again, last week's consolidation, last week's balance, they were able to get within that. Now, to me, it shows that sellers are really strong. They filled the gap and everything. We did see some signs of buying, but we did eventually reject it all, right? And you could even see it on the visual there. We did bounce, but we did eventually close down. And now market was there. And so now 57.34 was the level I was watching, also 5700s. And so one thing is that, 57.34 was rejecting pretty nicely in the pre-market, but again, it was not there. One thing I was kind of looking for, and I talked about it live on the market, right? I said, today I'll be looking at the VIX around 1905 and 20. There's some news at 10, and I said one thing I'm personally possibly would like to see is if we get a failed breakout above the 32s into the 34s to take the market short, right? And so we never got that move, and it sold off. But again, you could see that visual on the VIX. It was bouncing nicely. It was really bouncing nicely. And so the trade for me occurred now when we kind of saw that sell-off down here. We saw that sell-off, but we got below. But now we were able to consolidate down here, and we had some news here. And one thing to notice is right here we were building this low volume node, and that's something that aligns with my trading strategy. And obviously, if you guys want to know more about it, please let me know. But with that low volume node, to me, I was looking for a pullback there. And one thing I was looking for is, if you see it right here, there's a decent size offer around 57.10, right? 57.10, you could see it right around there. There was large offer. If we're able to get below that, I'm possibly going to look for a pullback. And I even talked about it right there. I said, still watching for a pullback around the 57.10, right? I said, if it gets us below, I'll be looking for a pullback. And I even said it up around right here. We'll be watching this 57.10. If we break below this, to look for a pullback to take the market short, right? And so one thing I was looking for was that pullback, and exactly what occurred, right? And I'll even give you that visual right there. Right? 57.10. Once we got that pullback above that 57.10 that showed that breakout and we continued to hold, I took the market short there off that low volume node and I just rode this down. First target was okay, sorry about that, my mic or something. I need to get a better mic. But once we saw that break below, that was my first target, break below there, and then my second target was around the 57. I put 56.83, which was the level I had. Again, this is all on my journal. I literally said ideally maintaining below 57.34 gives the most bearish scenario. I'll be entering the market looking for ways to take the market short. First target 5700 psych level, which is exactly what I targeted there. 5700, around the 5700, that was just at the low, and then the next one at 5682, and that's exactly what I took, 5683-ish, same thing. So overall, really great week, just visual, good on the week, 60%. Biggest thing to look at is this profit to loss ratio. Is I had a 5-to-1, which is really good, right? For every 1 point of risk I was trying to risk, for every 1 point loss, I was trying to make 5 points. So that's really, really good. Overall, happy to be profitable this week. And yeah, so straight into analysis. And I'm sorry for this long video, but straight into analysis. One thing I would like to say is there's a couple levels on watch. Currently, market is actually gapping down pretty heavy around the 55.8375. But for the weekly bearish level, I'm gonna keep in mind is maintaining below the previous week's low is going to be pretty important to me, right? So if we have continuation around the 56.19, below that is going to be pretty bearish, and we're going to be able to target those 55.50s, which is that 10% correction level from all-time highs, right? So this is going to be my weekly bearish below. We're going to have that one. And now my weekly bullish above is going to be those 50, to be exact, is going to be those 5706s, which is the set of single prints. So if we're actually able to get above here on these 5706s, then that's when I expect sellers or buyers to be a little bit more stronger, sellers to be a bit more exhausted. But again, this is just something to be on the lookout for. So weekly bullish above. And so those are the two important levels I have. Above 57.06 possibly gets the chance of the market getting above to that 57.65, which is those previous pivot highs. So be on the lookout for that. But also one thing I want you guys to pay attention to is this this level is going to be a weekly level you guys can watch, is around these 57.65s. It's kind of this range. If we're able to get above that, I see short-term strength from buyers, not long-term. Above 57.06 gives long-term strength. Short-term strength is going to be above 56.65. So be on the lookout for there, as we had that consolidation at this low and we built up that volume. So if we're able to get above that, we'll see short-term possible bounces, pullbacks into that level that hold targeting that 57.06. And below 56.19 is going to allow the market to get to those 10% correction level at 55.50. This is from a long time ago, so I'm still going to keep this, but 57.50 to 55.40. So be on the lookout for that. But once again, thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for all the views and stuff like that. Anything you guys find amusing from this, anything you guys find good from this, be sure to comment it, like it, whatever is okay with you guys. But something I probably will change is maybe just not doing the trade recaps, right? Just because maybe just for you guys are just mainly here for the weekly analysis, if you guys are here at all, but just here for the weekly analysis. So maybe I'll just be posting the weekly analysis, and maybe those that are just more interested on the trade recaps could just reach out to me personally, and I'll happily be able to record a video. But yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and peace out, guys. Trade well, be patient, and follow your plan. Peace, guys.